Do we want to jump into a couple definitions for this week?
Yeah, let's do two definitions. Why don't I start by asking you to teach us what attention mechanism means in the context of generative AI?
So, as I understand it, attention mechanism was sort of the breakthrough that led to this era that we're all experiencing now. It came out of a paper in 2017 from the Google DeepMind team, I think at the time, in a paper called Attention is All You Need. And it's a little bit different from the way that we think about attention colloquially. As I understand it and have tried to sort of help myself understand to talk to others about it, it's the equivalent of being able to look at a library full of millions and millions of books, and instead of having to read them sequentially and then draw connections at the end by touching back, the LLMs, the large language models, are able to sort of simultaneously look at all of the tokens and all of the words across all of those millions of volumes of books and make connections over time. So I almost envision like looking at a stack of books and being able to see instantly, this one pulls here and here and here, almost magically, which is what makes it so efficient to draw those connections and be able to predict the next word or token. And that was sort of the breakthrough and the precursor to the release of ChatGPT, which then accelerated our understanding of how to use LLMs that were powered by attention mechanism. Is that consistent with how you understand it?
Yeah, although I confess to feeling like I just barely understand it. I have to say that attention is all you need paper. I have now, so many people talk about it, and I have never even attempted to read it, and I sort of feel like I should. Have you read that paper?
I have not. I should, for sure. But I have used Gen AI to try to help me come up with analogies to describe what attention mechanism does. And one that it came up with, it helped me with the library example, but it also said it would be the equivalent of sort of having an old school detective go by themselves to a really complicated crime scene and try to jot down everything that they see and then draw conclusions, with having 1,000 detectives on a relatively confined crime scene and all be drawing connections to one another at the same time, and how much more quickly and effectively you would solve the crime, which I thought was
That's
interesting.
Yeah, that's great. I love that analogy. That's super helpful, actually. Yeah.
And definitely, I would have never thought of it on my own. Um, so, Bridget, another definition, another word that we hear about frequently is alignment. What is alignment?
So alignment is the objective, the goal of making sure AI systems behave in ways that are aligned with humans' values, human ethics, and human intentions. It's a pretty, I think, foundational concept in AI safety and ethics, and it's one that you hear people who work on those topics discuss pretty regularly. There is always this concern that AI systems will um, act on their own in ways that are not in sync with human objectives and interests and values. And so AI companies always have a safety team trying to work on alignment. Is that do you think I kind of got it right?
That's how I understand it. And I think it's a good definition to lead into our conversation about judges and courts, whom we trust to sort of uphold our values and interpret people's rights and obligations with one another. Just to kick off our conversation, there was a recent Thomson Reuters report that surveyed court administration and judges and asked for their impressions of generative AI tools. It was a little bit interesting. The results were slightly different from the rest of the profession. They were similar in the sense that, similar to the rest of the profession, the primary sentiment is one of neutrality and sort of waiting to see whether generative AI is actually helpful and useful and ethical to use. But different from the rest of the profession, court administrators and judges were more likely to report that the second emotion was concern, where law firm lawyers, the second emotion was optimism and hope that this could be used in positive and helpful ways. So I thought that that was interesting. Two other things that came out of the report that I noted, the reasons that people most frequently cited in court responses to the skepticism or the concern was first that they were concerned that the first first-person accounts of litigants before the court and the language that they use to describe their experiences is so essential to determining people's rights and obligations that people were concerned, judges in particular, I think, were concerned about substituting computer language for human language. And the second was that people just are not sure how they should be using generative AI tools in the work that they do for the courts. So as somebody who has spent a very long time leading a court in Michigan, the state Supreme Court, of course, what are your reactions to those findings?
I'm surprised that 18% of courts report having some training. I have said here before that I think courts are at such a disadvantage just because they rely on public funding, and public funding is a political process for all of their resources, and so AI resources are expensive and scarce and hard to come by for even the most well-heeled legal businesses. And so I feel like courts are at a real disadvantage in trying to keep up and have the resources for their teams to learn how to make use of the tools. The concern to me probably is more of a reflection of that, it's just going to be, it's just very, very hard for courts to keep up with this technology, given how quickly it's moving, and how hard it is to figure out how to use it well. But I don't think that ultimately they're going to stand by the view that the concern about losing the litigant's voice. I mean, there's lots of room to hear both a litigant's voice and also improve your operations. So I feel like that particular concern will be able to be addressed if the resource issue is addressable. That's the harder one to be.
Yeah, agreed. And we've talked in the past about our shared concern about the pace at which the private sector will move with these tools compared with public institutions generally, and courts especially.
Yeah, you and I have both. One tool that some courts are using, I don't know if we talked about this in the last episode, but the ClearBrief AI product, which I know you've met Jackie Schaefer, who's the founder of that company. And that particular AI product focuses on the facts, like on the record. And it's a great tool for courts. And Jackie has had really good luck with the few courts that are willing to use it, seeing what a huge benefit it is for their operations. So, when more and more products are out there that courts can see how they make their operations better and smoother and faster, I predict we'll see more and more comfort level with the technology.
Yeah, and ClearBrief's a great example too of an early emerging tool that makes use of the promise of all the great underlying data that we have in the profession, because it seems like in a lot of other spaces, we're still grappling with data and how to package it in a way that can be useful for LLMs. But ClearBrief really uses the court's dockets and information, as I understand it, right, and can support both courts and litigators. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's to the extent you're willing, you can share it among all of the parties in a particular dispute, because you can all kind of cross-reference your the work that it does is it pulls all of the facts and then shows you where they're pulled from in the record. So I always think, like, there are so many places where litigation could be less adversarial, right? Like if we could all agree at the front end on where the facts are not in dispute and where they are in dispute, it would really save us a lot of time and energy to be able to focus on the places where there's going to be room for people to disagree. And so it feels to me like one of those tools that could really, really bring some efficiencies to the adversarial process.
Thank you for tuning in to 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Stay informed and inspired as we continue to explore the AI-driven future of the legal profession. We'll see you next time.